Hey now, it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking TNA Wrestling, and it is Saturday, February 15th. It is 06:01 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time, and I'm Uncle Mike right here with my coffee. Let's take a swig of coffee for the working man. And got a lot of people that watch this show on YouTube. I've been streaming on Twitter now. But your primary resource is right here on Patreon, patreon.com/the Mike and JD show. So thank you so much for being here. I've got a lot of people that have a lot of cool jobs that watch this show. So if you're watching, obviously your Patreon, drop a comment. Of course, I love your Patreon comments. And then I clip this show all the time for YouTube, but I'm now clipping for Twitter as well. So I have figured out to do that on the StreamYard platform. So I can actually do a clip and send it over to Twitter. It just kind of pops up as a live stream. So if you're watching this on Twitter and you're not watching this on Saturday or like Sunday, because when I clip this, it's usually like 4 or 5 days afterwards. Sometimes it's sooner. But like this last week, I didn't actually get any clips out. I recorded on Saturday. I didn't get any clips out until Wednesday. So just so you know, if you're watching this clip on Twitter or YouTube, you could be enjoying this on Saturday morning, right alongside my buddy Billy, yo from Philly. What? So what was the mayor of Philadelphia? She didn't know how to spell Eagles. Elgles, something like that is what she said. And boring software engineer. I know you guys are the ones running the country now. Like boring software engineers rule the world. So, and your job clearly is very good because you're able to tour around the country and go to live TNA shows, and of course whatever show comes to Philly. But our boy Billy was actually in San Antonio for the latest round of tapings, and so we're gonna blame him for this week's episode because I think in San Antonio they got to that like fourth hour. And actually in 2 days it would have been like the eighth hour of TV tapings, and they were a lot of people had left already, and a lot of people were exhausted. So we're gonna blame guys like Billy for that because they're flying from all over the country to see the show. But yeah, it was an interesting week in TNA, and we'll get into the big shakeup that happened. I did record on Wednesday and talked about the shakeup in the production department and the marketing department, of course. So there's already a full. I think I did a full like almost 60 minutes earlier in the week, and I did all the clips and stuff. So all that stuff's out there. We're going to put a bow on that story here in a little bit. Also want to talk Chris Bay. I think Chris Bay set the world on fire with the video that he posted. So I'm going to get into that. Talk a little free agency news because we just got some free agents from AEW. And we already have locations for them or destinations for them. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we're going to start the show off talking about one Josh Alexander. So as everybody is aware, he is now a free agent. He had hired Barry Bloom as his agent. So Barry Bloom's like the super agent of pro wrestling. He dates back to the 80s. He was Jesse the Body Ventura's agent back in the day and was getting him Hollywood gigs and actually negotiated his deals with the WWF back in the day. Vince McMahon hated Barry Bloom and did not like working with him. But he has been an agent. He's Jim Ross's agent. So you go up and down AEW, a lot of the top stars there, their agent is Barry Bloom, like Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, I think Kazuchika Okada. So a lot of people that sign deals with AEW, they're being repped by Barry Bloom. And WWE talent, of course, AJ Styles famously is repped by Barry Bloom. So Josh Alexander, he was really committed to making sure that he becomes a free agent, and he hired Barry, and it looks like he already has a destination in mind. He is going to be headed to drum roll please, unless you've been living under a rock. He's going to be heading to AEW, which is the opposite of what I thought would happen. But I once he hired Barry, I think we should have saw that one coming, because once he hired Barry Bloom, I figured that AEW was the destination, because I did not think that WWE would care enough to negotiate a contract with him, because I just don't think they would see him as a big star. I figured he would want to go to WWE because of the upward mobility potential, and knowing that where he was, kind of where he's at in his career, and that if he went to WWE, he could reunite with Ethan Page and then get on the main roster, and then essentially, go up from there. That's where I thought he would end up, like legit. But once he got the agent, I was like, okay, definitely AEW, because WWE's not going to get into like a battle with AEW. They're not going to get into this negotiation war over Josh Alexander, because they don't see him as a star. Josh Alexander is one of my favorite TNA wrestlers of all time. Okay, Bart, he's like, for me, he's right up there with Angle and AJ and Samoa Joe and all those cats, right? But he's not a big star. He just isn't, and that's not. And I'm not trying to like knock the guy, but he was never really like a significant draw. We've seen what happens. Like Joe Hendry got hot. Joe Hendry is far and away way more popular than Josh ever was. So even though Joe Hendry has significant limitations in the ring, he's just way more over. The opposite is like Josh Alexander has limitations as far as star power, but he checks every other box that you could check, right? But I just never thought that in WWE they would see him as a guy that they could sell merch for, that could be a big star. So I figured they would want to bring him in on a lower deal and have him prove himself to them that he could be a big star. And I thought ultimately he would kind of break through and become a big star, not to the level of, your Drew McIntyres and CM Punks and stuff, but kind of like that next tier down, as like a great worker, could have a great match with anybody, can cut great promos, can emote very well, and that they could actually get something out of. But I just figured he would have to earn his way up there, that they wouldn't see it in him right away. But AEW is kind of more plugged in to guys like Josh, and they're more open to signing guys like Josh. And look, and this is not me knocking Tony Khan. Okay. I'm not going to get into like Tony Khan burials. I think Tony would like knows enough people that knows Josh, and they know that he can do great matches, and he's like, boom, sold. His cage match rating is, whatever it is, like it's probably in between 8 and 10, and right up there with a lot of the guys that he likes to bring in. And I figured that like he has great matches. Well, that's who we want on our roster, because that's what our roster is about, right? Is having the great matches. There's two different types of companies within WWE and AEW, although we've seen a shift in AEW recently to the more sports entertainment side. But WWE, they don't care what your cage match rating is. It's like, can you sell t-shirts? Can you sell tickets? Can you become a celebrity, right? Because WWE is like celebrity type wrestling. And that's not a knock on WWE either. That's just kind of what they do. Like a guy like Jey Uso, who does Yeet and does his dance, is going to make a lot more money than a guy like Josh Alexander, who is, he he's your everyman, carries a lunch box to work every day, like that. And he was like a legit construction worker, right, for a long time. So there's just two different types of guys. Whereas in AEW, I think they would covet a guy like Josh. I think he comes in, he's going to have a lot of trouble breaking through that upper echelon that they have up there. But as far as like in-ring ability, he's going to have so many good matches. Like we just saw him have the match with Takeshita, but like Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher, Will Ospreay, we've seen that one before. My favorite TNA match of all time, and my favorite Josh Alexander match of all time. And then we'll probably finally get that Kenny Omega match that we all wanted whenever Kenny Omega was working with TNA, that we thought we were going to get. Looks like we'll finally get that. Now, no deal has been signed, but Fightful Select is reporting that Josh is headed to AEW. And it's not what my prediction was. It's not exactly a shock or a surprise and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So, and also with him going to AEW, he will still very likely be able to work Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, and I think that's also pretty important to him, considering he is the head trainer for the Border City Wrestling Dojo, and still lives in Windsor. And I think that him having that capability is very important to him. And I get the feeling that while there was no bidding war, AEW is going to be paying him a lot of money considering who his agent is. I honestly think that TNA would have outbid WWE for Josh. I really do. Because I think that WWE is probably going to bring him in on an NXT deal, and those NXT deals are not that lucrative. They're not. Top TNA money is better than NXT money, for sure. But when you go to NXT, it's not about what you're making right now. It's about what you think that you're capable of making in the future. Okay. When you take an NXT deal, it's not about what, like, the 75 grand downside that you're going to make that first year or two. It's about the millions that you think that you're going to make should you make it up to the main roster and you get over, right? That's the aspiration. So I think that he very likely would have made more money immediately with TNA had he stayed in TNA than he would have if he went to NXT. Okay. But AEW is going to be paying him like he's like a main roster talent right away. He's not going to be making more than Ospreay and those guys, but he's going to be kind of like that next tier down and making really good money. And Tony Khan pays out really well. He pays the talent really well. You can't knock the guy for that. You just can't. So, but yeah, man, Josh Alexander's run with TNA is over. I'll share a personal story. So I actually DM'd him a couple of days ago and was like, hey, I like to do this occasionally, and I don't really publicize it, but I DM'd him just like, hey, look, if this is your last, I did this with PCO too. I was like, hey, if you're done with TNA, it's been a pleasure covering your work, because guys like you make, this podcast a lot easier, and especially for Josh, he was leading the company during some really dark times when they were wrestling in front of nobody in bars, and most of the crowd is just sitting on their hands or playing on their phones and not caring about what's going on in the ring. Josh Alexander still went out there and he would give you everything he's got, and he would get the crowd back into it. Hell, he wrestled Speedball Mike Bailey for an hour in front of a bunch of people, like 200 people that just did not care. The energy was that building had no energy whatsoever. And him and Speedball, they didn't care that there was no crowd. They just went out there and did fucking 60 minutes. And in fact, he did another 60-minute match with TJP in front of no fans. It's like it was an Iron Man match on Impact. It started off on the before the Impact show that they used to have, like the pre-show. It started on the pre-show, and then it bled into the main show. And I thought that match was actually really good. I thought that match was better than the Speedball match. So he was leading the company during some really dark times, and you never got the sense that Josh didn't actually go to work and give it everything he's got. And I just always appreciated that about Josh. And that's why I put him up there, right there with AJ and Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle and some of the great TNA wrestlers of all time. He's there with them. Not as a draw or as a star, but just like bell to bell. And I'll be honest, I like his promos. I like his character. And I thought his heel work the last year was incredible. And I'm just like, man, I wish we would have gotten this sooner and for longer. But I, just think back to some of his great matches. I just remember like his early X Division run. He had some good matches with obviously the TJP match, but he had a good match with Ace Austin. I remember the Triple Threat Revolver match where he was really good in that, and that's kind of what set him apart. And he ultimately got the X Division championship. And then of course, he wins the world title in 2021 at Bound for Glory, beating Christian. I actually really enjoyed that match. I was hoping that would have been Kenny Omega, but we just didn't get that. So he got that. He got the title, and then immediately Moose takes it from him, which in hindsight turned out to be a pretty good angle. I was pretty pissed off at the time. And then he goes on to he had a great match with Minoru Suzuki. He ends up having a great match with Jonah, who is not, Bronson Reed from the WWE during that time that in between WWE stints, he did like 6-month tour in TNA. So they had that great match at Hard to Kill that year. And it was so weird during that time because Scott D'Amore was keeping himself on TV, of course, and he was playing the heel in that feud for no reason. He was playing the heel. He just kept Josh away from the world title, and he didn't really have a good reason. There was no reason for it. He's like, I'm protecting you. No. It's like the whole storyline was stupid, but they ended up paying it off. And I thought that his match at Rebellion against Moose, and he said he listed it as one of his all-time favorites. I love that match. I think at some point we should revisit that match because I don't think people appreciate just how good that was. And they did a decent house. And Billy, remind me, that was in the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, right? I think so. And I think they did like an okay house. Probably not like, 2,000 or anything like that, but I think they had in and around 1,000, which for 2022 TNA was really freaking good. And the crowd was into it, and I thought that match delivered. I really did. I really enjoyed that match. And then he went on to have like one of the great world title runs in TNA history with just banger after banger match. And so you got to give the guy credit. Hell, he ended up. So not only did he have he had the Eddie Edwards match at Bound for Glory, which I thought was incredible. He had the Bully Ray match at Hard to Kill in 2023, which freaking ruled. It was way better than it had any right being. Io has an update. Yeah, they uploaded a playlist of his title reign. Yeah, I think that people need to go back and revisit that title reign because it was a damn good title reign as far as like bell to bell matches. It really was a big time title reign or title run. Just match after match, always delivered. And then he had the speedball match, of course, which I felt was a bit overrated, to be honest with you. And I think it was more because I think they just did that in like a bar in Cincinnati, and a lot of people were out, and they just needed people to go out there and like take up time. And so that's just what they did. His Slammiversary match with Eric Young, the 20th anniversary, was really good. That was a really fun match. Way better than what they just had. way better than what they just had. Look, here we go. Ishii versus Josh Elliott. Yeah, Under Siege that year. And I really liked his match at Against All Odds with Joe Doring. That happened a couple weeks. It's like a low-key banger. I don't think it got a lot of fanfare because it was 2 weeks after the Slammiversary that year at Against All Odds. And I think it might have been Atlanta. And if I remember correctly, it was in Atlanta. And they went out there and because Joe Doring he was shot at this point. Okay. I don't think the cancer had come back, but physically he had just had a lot of problems because when he was in those Japan years took its toll on him. And so by the time he got to Impact, there was a reason why he was in a tag team for the most part. It's because his body just couldn't take the beating of full blown singles matches. But he turned it on one more time for a match of Josh Alexander in the main event at Center Stage for Against All Odds on a Friday show that nobody watched, but people here watching the show checked it out. I'm glad that Garrett Kidney uploaded that playlist because I might just go down a rabbit hole and check that out. But yeah, farewell to Josh Alexander. Looks like, so I DM'd him telling him that I appreciated his run in TNA, and that while Pentagon got me back into TNA in 2018, Josh Alexander kept me going on this podcast during some really dark times. So I just wanted to let him know that. And then he kind of kayfabed me. He's like, well, who knows where I'll end up, Mike, but thank you so much. And he said, I don't know if my run is done with TNA at this point, but it's not like he's going to tell me, oh yeah, I'm totally done. I'm signing with AEW. He's not going to tell me that because, well, I'm no big name journalist. He knows who I am, right? So, but he sent me a nice message back, and so that was really cool. I'm gonna start doing stuff like that more often because I think it is important to do that. So, but Billy says, yeah, I like this match with Jonah. Also, yeah, that was before the title run. He said Josh is a first ballot TNA Hall of Famer. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, do I think Josh could come back? Of course, everybody always comes back. Like, no run in a company lasts forever, right? Like EY has gone back and forth several times now. I think that it's possible he can get to AEW, and then at the end of his next contract, if TNA is in a position, to sign him and compete with whatever offer he wants, I think they will. Because he is kind of part of the fabric of the company. He's part of the company's identity. He's intertwined with it. He's a guy that carried the company for a long time. He was the best wrestler in the company for years, and was always like a stabilizing force at the top of the card. If Josh Alexander had a title match on a card that you were watching for TNA, you knew at least one match was going to deliver. He never not delivered. Right? Even after he lost his title, after his injury, he still went on to have usually the best match of the night, right? You go back to like even his heel run. So he had the title match, I believe it was an Iron Man match. So yeah, he had Iron Man match with Nick Nemeth, which I thought was great. Took like 30 minutes to get great, but like the last 30 minutes was great. His match with Joe Hendry put Joe Hendry over huge. He had so many different matches with Steve Maclin after his title run. Yet when he was a babyface, him and Maclin had that fucking awesome match in 2023, and then they followed it up with another 2 great matches in 2024 at Bound for Glory, and then of course at Turning Point. Just so many great matches, so many great opponents. It's hard to really name them all, but maybe I'll get a list together and do like a top 10 like Josh Alexander matches for like not really audio, but like just like get a list together, because I think his run warrants that. It really does. And we'll close the Josh Alexander talk with this. He'll still represent us in TNA wherever he goes. Same with Jordan.